They are two of the brightest kids you could ever meet, Troy and Alana Pack of Danville in Northern California. In this photo, Troy is 10 and Alana is 7. The most recent photo we have of them is this marker on their grave. Almost 10 years ago, they were killed by a driver who was drunk and under the influence of painkillers she got from a physician who didn't know all he should have before writing her a prescription. Since then, Bob and Carmen Pack have led the struggle to make California doctors more accountable. Last Monday here in Norwalk, the Troy and Alana Pack Patient Safety Act moved closer to becoming a reality by gathering enough signatures to qualify it for this year's November ballot. All of this, as we say, good Sunday morning, everybody, is the work of our guest today, Jamie Court. You know him if you watch this program at all. He's been on with us many, many times. He's the president of ConsumerWatchdog.org. And we should just, for people who may need the reminder, ConsumerWatchdog.org stems from Prop 103. 103, which your colleague and the founder of the organization, Harvey Rosenfield, was instrumental in establishing.
Right, he was the author, and it was an insurance reform 25 years ago. We just had a report that we haven't talked about from the Consumer Federation of America. Since we instituted the auto rate regulation, and 25 years ago, rates in California are lower in real dollars for your auto insurance than they were in 1988. And we're the only state in the nation, and Consumer Federation of America said thanks to 103, that's what happened. And the savings, $102 billion with a B. So Harvey's legacy lives on and continues to inspire us, and we keep moving on.
Harvey very much being with us still.
He's still, he's still in the corner office. He always says we talk about him like he's dead, but he's moving on to other things.
Yeah, and in fact, you've got something coming up involving health insurance, which we will talk about a little bit later in the program. But we're going to begin with Troy and Alana Pack. Monday, the Registrar Recorder's Office in Norwalk. Big event.
Yeah, and Bob Pack and Carmen Pack, the parents of Troy and Alana, were there, and it really, this act is all about them, and it's all about Bob. After a drunk and high driver ran off the road and swerved and tragically killed the 7-year-old and 10-year-old, and also the twins in Carmen's belly, because she was there. They had to figure out their life and then to figure out what went wrong. And Bob went and created an electronic prescription drug database. He figured out that no one at Kaiser, who had prescribed all these pills, and there was many doctors who prescribed thousands of pills to a drug addict, knew what was going on. I mean, she didn't have any symptoms, but also no one was keeping track of all the pills. So he created a statewide electronic database to keep track of every electronic pill in the state called the Cures database, and it's functioning today, but it's not mandatory. And doctors have not been wanting to use it on a mandatory basis. So part of the Troy and Alana Pack Patient Safety Act is requiring doctors who prescribe Class 2 narcotics to check the database to make sure they're not prescribing the addicts. Part of the act is dealing with another part of substance abuse, which is substance abuse among physicians. And part of the act is dealing with redress in court when there is medical negligence.
Okay, let's make sure folks will recognize the names of some of the prescriptions, some of the drugs that are Class 2, Part 2?
Class 2 narcotics.
Class 2.
I mean, any serious narcotic is a Class 2 narcotic. I don't think Vicodin has yet become a Class 2 narcotic, actually. I think they're considering making it. But, I mean, morphine, any of the Oxycontin, any of the prescription drugs that are part of what we've really seen as an epidemic of drug abuse, particularly among younger people.
And the prescription drugs that it would not be unusual to find them in homes.
That's right. And the Journal of the American Medical Association said the main reason for prescription drug abuse isn't that people are buying out in the black market. It's actually prescriptions written by doctors. So doctors, consciously or unconsciously, are dealing drugs to people who are chronically abusing them. And that is something we're tackling with requiring doctors to take charge of this and check the database before they prescribe the drugs.
And to make sure that our viewers are clear, there are people out there who will, in effect, they go doctor shopping.
And that was what this drunk drug addict driver did. She was doctor shopping. She got as many pills as she could. She literally had thousands of pills, and the doctors didn't know. She didn't really present symptoms, but the doctors really quickly wrote the prescription, which is why another part of the act is holding doctors accountable. See, Bob, after he lost his kid, said, well, what can I do? So he created the database, but he also said, I think Kaiser's responsible. It was a huge corporation. What went wrong? And he was really confounded when he found out, when he went to sue Kaiser, to take them to court, he found out the most that he could collect for the death of his children under a 38-year-old cap in the state law was $250,000. It was set by Jerry Brown in 1975, and it hasn't been indexed for inflation since. So he had a hard time finding an attorney to take his case. He had a hard time holding Kaiser accountable. He didn't want the money. He said at this press conference Monday he wanted accountability, and he didn't feel like he got it. And Kaiser, of course, without having to pay significant damages when something like this goes wrong, they're not inclined to fix their system. Not that they're uncaring people, but they're a corporation. And if they don't pay a financial price, they don't fix the errors. So part of the PackAct, which voters will see, is indexing this cap that's been in place for 38 years for inflation so that people who lose children, people who lose senior citizens, people who lose loved ones due to egregious malpractice can get representation. You can, under the law, get lost wages, you can get medical bills, but there are people who, when they die, and it's just an egregious set of circumstances, if you're a child or a senior or a homemaker, low-wage worker, you don't have wage loss, you don't have medical bills, and $250,000 is the maximum. That's just not fair. The value of everything else has gone up since 1975, and Bob and Carmen think that should go up too.
What kind of resistance is there out there?
Oh, the entire medical establishment is against this. Kaiser has put in $5 million, I believe, to the $30 million that's been raised by hospitals, malpractice insurers, the California Medical Association. They don't want change. They don't want accountability. They don't want transparency. But there's also a provision of the initiative that I think they hate more than anything, which is doctor drug testing. You know, pilots are drug tested on a random basis. Janitors are drug tested on a random basis, but particularly transportation workers, bus drivers. Doctors are not. And we have some recent statistics that show substance abuse among doctors is a significant problem too.
It's been a problem for a long time. Doctors writing prescriptions for their own habits.
That and drinking. The California Medical Board found that, and it's a shocking statistic, 18% of physicians will have a substance abuse problem during their careers. That's nearly 1 in 5 doctors. And when Consumer Watchdog, my group, reviewed the disciplinary actions taken against doctors by the state medical board, the regulator, over the last decade, we found that 1 in 6 of the disciplinary actions against doctors was a result of substance abuse by the doctors. Either they were abusing a substance or they were overprescribing a substance. But that's still a very high number. And there are victims when doctors are drunk or high, and it's not a very large percentage of the doctors, but they can cause a very large amount of damage.
From basic things like a misdiagnosis.
A misdiagnosis, or we've had terrible cases, OBGYNs just pulling too hard and literally paralyzing babies. I mean, we've seen people that's happened to over the last 20 years, and they're adults now. One woman who lives in Claremont who is literally in the same state Christopher Reeves is in. And the doctor admitted it. He actually went on practicing for another 15 years with a few more lawsuits against him. There's some really tragic cases, and the problem is the medical establishment really doesn't think about accountability, and it's based on peer review. So doctors really, we count on doctors to tell the medical board or to tell other doctors when there's a problem. It doesn't happen enough. There's a sort of a code of silence, and even when, I think most doctors are very ethical. They want to say something.
Yeah,
they're worried about being sued by the other doctors. So part of the PackAct actually is when a doctor comes forward to talk about substance abuse or malpractice by another doctor, they're immunized from liability from the other doctor suing them, which is really important. But they're also now under the PackAct, if we pass it, there will be a duty for doctors to come forward when they know about adverse events, which is when there is something that goes wrong that shouldn't.
But one would think that if they are operating the way physicians are supposed to, they would welcome this sort of thing.
Yes, and a lot of doctors, we've actually got calls from doctors who welcome it. Unfortunately, the Medical Association in recent years has been very political. So the members of the board are members of the malpractice insurance companies, Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente, as we understand it, pays for all its doctors who want to be California Medical Association members, so it is disproportionately represented. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of those doctors. So they have a big voting share. I think rank and file doctors don't have a problem with random drug testing. By the way, this is only for doctors with hospital privileges. We've taken the same pattern on drug testing as applies to pilots, to bus drivers, to other transportation workers, and said, look, it's random. It could happen to you, so that's a deterrent. Also, if there is a report, a credible report to the medical board, they have the right to order a drug test. And if a doctor refuses it, their license is suspended. Remarkably today, the California Medical Board does not have the ability to tell a doctor they have to be drug tested. They first have to prove a case against them to get a drug test, and by that time, there's a lot of damage done.
Yeah, and we just have about a minute left to go, but is there any comparable, what would we call it, freedom for people who practice other critical professions?
Well, I mean, I think every other public safety job has a duty to be drug tested,
Right.
but we also have something, protections for the doctor against false negatives, false positives. There's a right to appeal. This isn't, we're not doing anything that is not been accepted by other professions. So pilots, for instance, they show up for work, and probably once every couple of years, someone asks them to pee in a cup. Yeah. And that is a real deterrent to pilots drinking, because they know that could happen. Right. It doesn't happen often, but it could happen.
We got to take a break, which is one of the things that happens often. So we'll do that. We'll be right back. Stay with us, please. For more information on consumerwatchdog.org and all of the things that consumerwatchdog.org is involved in, very simple. Just go to your keyboard, type in consumerwatchdog.org. You can spend a whole afternoon sitting there looking at all of the things that are going on there, and most of them are things that we are all, in one way or another, we should be aware of. So consumerwatchdog.org. When we come back in about 2 more minutes, we've got another 10 minutes with Jamie Court. Stay with us. This is Midday Sunday. We are delighted to welcome back Jamie Court. He is the president of consumerwatchdog.org, the Consumer Watchdog organization, just around the corner from us here at our West LA studios. You're in Santa Monica. So we have the PackAct Act. That's probably going to qualify for the November ballot.
We've submitted 840,000 signatures, and that should be good enough to get us on the November ballot, because it's more than ample given the validity rates. Yeah.
The other issue that Americans are thinking about right now is the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but you also have another initiative that will be on the November ballot that is it has echoes of Prop 103.
Well, it does more than echo. It extends this auto insurance and home insurance regulation that's been so successful in California, the health insurance rates, because
to health insurance.
Yeah, well, health insurance rates, if you've noticed, they've been going up like a runaway train. I mean, Anthem Blue Cross just had a 25% rate hike. We keep seeing them, but in California, no one has the power to really look at these rate hikes and say they're not acceptable and then stop them. 25 other states have that, give that right to an insurance commissioner, and we don't have that in California. So we're extending the really successful insurance regulation that's applied to auto and home to health insurance, and we're requiring that health insurers do a lot of justification before they get to raise their rates, and we're also going to actually apply the same type of public participation provisions we've used with auto and home, so that consumer groups like ours or any member of the public can stand up and say, no, that rate's not justified. You can hire an actuary, and if you prove the rate's not reasonable, then the insurance companies have to pay your actuaries, and so by doing this, we've kept auto insurance and home insurance rates really low in California. We can do it for health insurance too. And we have the California Nurses Association behind it, along with, Senator Dianne Feinstein's in favor of it. And she's fairly pro-business. So this is a really just kind of moderate measure that actually does a lot for consumers, but also does something for small businesses and businesses who pay for these insurance rates, and increasingly it's too big a share of their bottom line. It's got to come down, and we think a lot of the rate hikes are very unjustified, that the insurers are sitting on money in reserves they shouldn't be sitting on. We know that they're doing a lot in terms of passing on political contributions, excessive executive compensation. You cannot do that in the auto insurance market in California. If an insurance company fights us like they're going to fight our ballot measure, WellPoint just gave $13 million, this is the parent of Anthem Blue Cross, against the health insurance rate regulation measure. When they do that, now they can pass that on to you, the consumer. But if we pass this ballot measure, they won't be able to pass on their political lobbying costs, their candidate contributions. If they pay their CEO too much, and believe me, most of them pay their CEOs too much, they can't pass on whatever that is, an excessive insurance rate. So the health insurance regulation is just so critical for all of us. And of course, we're going to be facing a huge opposition among the health insurance industry.
Of course.
But I think if the public can just hear what this has done for auto insurance and home insurance, and realize what it's really about, consumers standing up for themselves, that we're gonna break through.
Have you done any projections on how much they would drop if all of the things that really aren't that necessary were removed?
Well, we know that we haven't done a projection overall, but we have looked at individual company rates, and so has the Department of Insurance. So many of the recent rate hikes, which are double-digit rate hikes, are unreasonable, and they have been for many years. Under the initiative, we're actually able to look back to 2012 And if the rates are excessive since 2012 for health insurance companies, the insurance commissioner, if he finds that, can order refunds going backwards. So we're talking about saving people probably, hundreds to maybe thousands of dollars on their health insurance over the last couple of years just to catch up to where we are today.
Actual cash in your
Actual
pocket?
cash in our pocket, yeah. Because, the average family is paying $12,000 a year for health insurance. And if those rates are 20% too high, you do the math, that's $2,400 a year.
And the insurance companies have been raising rates because they can.
Because they can, and they don't have to justify themselves to anyone. And in other states where we have seen this type of rate justification review and regulation, we've seen a cap on rates. Massachusetts, which had very high rates, implemented this provision, and rates have been flat for the last 2-3 years. New York implemented the provision, the rates have been flat for after we did this with auto insurance. It's very interesting. In '88, there was a mandatory auto insurance law. And then we passed Prop 103 to say, well, if auto insurance is going to be mandatory, it better be affordable. Well, the parallels are eerie, right? We now have a mandatory health insurance law, but there's no requirement that health insurance be affordable. And that's what this health insurance review and rate regulation measure is all about. It's about making sure that there's someone watching, that there's an independent voice as we're implementing Obamacare, as insurers are able in California to play with their numbers and jack up rates. Someone's watching and someone can say no if the rates are unreasonable.
We want to talk about healthcare, but just before we move to that, California is often seen as the most progressive state in the country. And why is it that New York, et cetera, they already have these caps, these controls in place, and we don't?
I've been fighting the health insurers and the insurers in the Capitol for 25 years, and I can tell you, these are the most powerful industries in Sacramento, the medical and the insurance industry. These are the guys who spend hundreds of millions to get their way with candidates, with politicians, and in the ballot measure process. So it's all about money and power. I mean, Senator Calderon, who was recently indicted by the FBI, was the head of the insurance committee, and he used his power often for the insurance industry as well as for the medical scheme that he is alleged to have taken multiple bribes in. So when we look at these corruption scandals, Leland Yee, who just fell up in San Francisco, I'll tell you, the California Medical Association, the insurance industry, had no bigger friend in Sacramento than Leland Yee. So corruption is part of it, but there's just also just the legal cash register politics. So you can, we tried for 12 years to get health insurance rate regulation through the legislature with Dave Jones, our insurance commissioner, was in the legislature, and others. And we could never move it past the Senate to the Senate floor because the insurers always controlled a certain number of votes that kept us from doing it. Senator Calderon, who was recently indicted, was one of those votes. Senator Wright, who was recently indicted, was also another of those votes. They always had just enough to keep us from getting to the governor's desk. I think the governors would have had to sign it if we did it. Even Schwarzenegger probably would have had to sign it, but we could never move it out of the legislature.
Proving once again the value and the importance of the initiative. Going out and collecting signatures.
This is all about, this is our affiliate Consumer Watchdog campaign has done this as a lobbying effort because that's what you have to do with initiatives, but this is all about direct democracy. This is where the public actually has a chance to vote on something that's good for it, and the only real issue, because we've seen the polling, on both these issues, more than 2/3 of voters want this. It's a question of whether they'll be able to see through the smokescreen of confusing ads by the industries claiming it isn't what they think it is.
We only have about 2 minutes left for this segment. Affordable Health, the Affordable Care Act. Deadline is coming up. It's days away.
Yeah, and I think that in many ways, look, it's insured a lot of people. It's put people into insurance policies that are there whether they get sick or not, but there's a lot of hiccups. And what I think California has to do is look at Covered California, the exchange, which has had tremendous problems for consumers, and we need to start fixing it. I think we have to accept where we are as a place that is better than where we were. The problem I see is Covered California, which has really become like an insurance agent for the insurance industry, the health insurers, isn't willing to accept its problems. There's long waits. People were supposed to have gotten coverage that didn't get it, but the big problem with the new policies is that if you're in Covered California, not in the private market, very skinny networks of doctors and hospitals, and you better make sure your doctor and hospital is on that list because people are finding out that their oncologists weren't on that list, doctors and hospitals that they've had on the old plans were on the list, and I think the health insurers have to be forced to open up bigger networks of doctors and hospitals because right now what rates they're charging are too high if they don't have enough doctors and hospitals in it.
On that note, let's take one more break. We'll be right back. As we wrap up midday, here's the place to go, consumerwatchdog.org. Point your browser in that direction. You'll find more about what we have talked about, plus a whole lot of other things. So consumerwatchdog.org. And if you've missed all of that, you'll find it here, myfoxla.com. Just click that, look for the Midday Sunday logo, and you'll have all this information there just as well. What do we need to say to wrap this program up? We got about 2 minutes left.
Well, I think it's just exciting times for healthcare and for health insurance, and as frustrated as people are, I think they have to realize part of it's growing pains, and we can make things better at the state level. And in addition to the ballot measures we talked about, which our affiliate Consumer Watchdog campaign's working on, there's also a couple more ballot measures that unions are passing to limit how much hospital executives can be paid. That may go on the ballot. To limit how much can be charged by hospitals, which the public, that may go on the ballot. I think it's going to be an exciting ballot for direct democracy. And I think the public just has to take the time to look through the ballot pamphlet and figure this out for themselves.
I don't want to get you too wound up because we have just a little bit of time, but you've used this phrase direct democracy a couple of times. That's really important, and it makes a lot of sense.
It does. We're still feeling the shocks from 25 years ago in the insurance reform. We've seen the savings. They haven't been able to undo it, and we need to do that again. We need to show the special interest in Sacramento that every once in a while the people can go to the ballot and fix things, because in the interim, that will mean Sacramento, once the FBI's through there, will be a lot cleaner and a lot better, and they'll worry about the ballot initiative the next time. We actually will get more traction in the legislature if every once in a while we can pass something landmark by the voters that's good for democracy and defies the status quo.
Anybody ever thought about making illegal lobbying?
Probably violate some First Amendment rules.
Well, yeah. He's an attorney, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah,
I'm not actually, but I live with enough of
them
to know that.
There you are. Okay, okay.
But no, I think lobbying's okay. The problem is money. The power of money over that process is staggering in Sacramento. I've seen it. And even the good people don't want to get on the sides of the people who they're not necessarily friendly with. So we just never have enough votes for something great until we have a moment like I think this year's ballot, where if voters and consumers stand up for 10 years, it will be felt in Sacramento, and we'll have much better legislation just because there's the threat that we'll go back to the people and do something really significant.
Why don't you have a law degree?
I never had time. I started canvassing for insurance reform, and it got me going.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I was never a member of the Boy Scouts, so look, this is going. It's a good thing the program is over with, because we're going off in directions we don't want to go. Jamie, thank you very much for being with us as always. And again, it's consumerwatchdog.org. We'll see you back here next week. Be part of the democracy. See you later.
If I'm sentimental when we say goodbye, don't be angry with me should I cry. When you're gone, yet I'll dream a little dream as years go by.